Well, hello and welcome to the Footy Interchange. Terrific to have your company on the podcast. This is the show where we jump right around the country and talk to those in the know, in their home states, about what is happening on the ground and get the latest right around the AFL. Adam Papalia with you, as I am with Will Schofield each and every week. Scoey, great to chat to you. And made a massive day in the AFL. We see a coach removed at Melbourne.
Yeah, we do. And there's... For watching it along, it feels like there's more surprise than perhaps I thought there would be. Are you surprised? I wasn't.
Maybe a little surprised that it came this week rather than last, given they've just won by 80-odd points. But clearly it's something that's been in the works for a number of weeks.
Yeah, and I don't think you can just sort of rock up after a bad loss at St Kilda on Monday and then sack the coach. Like, it feels like you need to put a bit of work into it. So if they hadn't made their mind up then, maybe that first Monday presentation that they did, right? I said this last week. Like, that last board meeting last Monday, you know what's going on there. They've probably made the call then, given it a week. Doesn't matter what happens in the West Coast game. Monday, see you later. I think it's a good move. If they're going to do it, you may as well do it. What's the point of waiting around to the end of the year? You've got, I think Carlton could be in the same position shortly. You've got 4 really good coaches, in the market, maybe. I think it's a good move. Get a head start on everyone else and start getting the hunt for a new coach.
Just looking from the outside, it's felt like they've just needed a refresh. And the easiest way to do that at a club is to move the coach on, get someone in with some fresh ideas, because it's easier to, as harsh as it is, to change your coach than it is to change your playing list significantly. Where do you see Melbourne in the conversation right now in terms of if they get a new coach in, do you see an immediate bounce back with the list that they've still got and the talent that they've still got on their list? Like, is that a possible thing, or are they in the situation where they have to completely, change things up and take a few more years and rebuild?
They don't have a forward line at all. You'd have to go and recruit someone there. Whether or not that's development or selection or mismanagement. I mean, Van Rooyen seemed like he was the likely type, but he spent a lot of time in the VFL this year. They've got the midfield, they've got the back line, I think. So, yeah, it almost feels like, geez, it'd be disappointing with a midfield of Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, Viney to go, okay, guys, we're starting again. Like, that feels like a contending midfield.
Yep.
The back line with May and Lever, and then you add some really good young players around them. That feels like a back line that can hold up in a premiership year. So I just think their forward line's the only part that really has struggled to a point. If you go and recruit there and go again. But if they did that, and this is where it's going to be, we look back and go, oh, they shouldn't have done, this is what West Coast did, right? Isn't it? They would go, okay, we're going to go again. They double down and it doesn't work. And you go, why didn't you just restart when you sacked Goodwin? So I think probably the easier decision would be to reset and to go to the draft and trade some of those senior players away. That would be easier than, I think, trying to go and win one with this group. But it's going to be an interesting decision.
It's going to be a massive call on the list build for Melbourne and which way they actually go. Because I'm with you. I feel like they have still the pieces there, but they just haven't been able to get that connection. Obviously, inside 50, they're needing another key forward, which they could go and try and find in this upcoming off-season. It's just whether can you fit it in with all the other stars that you've got there.
John Longmire and his game plan and what he built at Sydney feels like with that list could work. I would think he'd be top of the list in terms of who they'd want to take on. We work with Adam Simpson all the time. He has... neither has John Longmire. No one's come out and said, I want to coach next year, have they?
Well, not until there's a job vacant, they wouldn't come out and do that. So I think this is where the pieces start to move now, is once there is a vacant role, then people start to flag their interest into whether they're going to be involved or not.
Yeah.
And for Melbourne, does it come down to simply, okay, if you go and get an experienced coach, you're all in and you're going again and you're trying to get a quick bounce back over the next season or two whilst you've still got Max Gawn there. Petrarca and Oliver, they're not that old. They're 28, 29. No. You've still got May and Lever. Kazai Piggott's just signed a massively long deal. He's still really young. If you go and get an experienced coach, it feels like Melbourne could still be in that window. If you go and get an untried coach, does then the strategy change and you go, okay, well, now you've got a couple of years we're going to trade a few pieces out. We're going to bring some younger talent in and rebuild again for another couple of seasons.
Yeah. I mean, and then this is the challenge that faces every club in the AFL. Where's our list at? And clearly they didn't want Simon Goodwin a part of that going forward. It should be said that they've also moved on the CEO and the president in the last 12 months as well. So it's not as if Simon Goodwin's the fall guy here. I mean, there's a lot of change happening at Melbourne. Interestingly enough, Simon Goodwin in the press conference was asked what's he going to miss, what's he not going to miss. And he said the players, he's going to miss them and the relationships. But he said the drive to Cassisi, which is where their training facility is, he's not going to miss. If you go and have a look on Google Maps, that is a long way away. And I know internally, maybe we can ask Drew Jones in a bit about that part of it, but that seems like it's an area that Melbourne need to tidy right up of their football club. People don't want to go there because of where the training facilities are. It's like a 45-minute drive with no traffic from Melbourne. You basically got to go live in Frankston, which it's really close to. So they've got a fair bit to do, Melbourne. I think they're a long way off it, and it would take a really quick refresh to challenge next year, I think.
There's a lot to discuss around that. We'll check in with Drew Jones, who's been on the spot at the press conference today, involved in all of it. Of course, if you want to have your say on what you think Melbourne should do, drop it in the comments or hit us up on social media. The Footy Interchange Exchange will drop a little bit later on in the week. But let's get to it. Let's get right around the country. Plenty to chat. Big retirement in the AFL today as well, which we'll discuss on the way through right here on the Footy Interchange. Well, the big story of the day, as we've discussed, is Simon Goodwin's departure from the Melbourne Footy Club. And we go straight to Victoria, to our man Drew Jones, of course, from Fox Sports News, from Fox Footy, and from Goat Fantasy, which we'll talk a little bit later on. But Drew, take us through today, how it's played out and how you've seen it unfold.
G'day, boys. Yeah, I don't think we were necessarily expecting this announcement today. There's certainly been a lot of noise in the background about Simon Goodwin's future as coach. If you're like me, at about 8:30 this morning in a sauna, it wasn't the phone call you were expecting to get, but we all got cracking what is always a massive day in footy and a sad day when a coach loses their job. So Brad Green and the board came to a decision yesterday after talking things over the weekend that Simon Goodwin's tenure was over. That decision was made, and then Brad Green jumped in his car and called Goody immediately and started driving to his house to inform him of the news. Goodwin was given the option to coach out sort of a farewell game against the Bulldogs at the MCG, which unsurprisingly he turned down. And then a press conference was called today, which we attended this afternoon. Troy Chaplin will take over as the interim coach for the rest of the season. But, disappointing year for the Demons. I think the first podcast we ever all did together, I put on the agenda that it was a big year for the Demons and Simon Goodwin, and so it has proved with only 7 wins and cultural issues affecting the club. His tenure is over.
So, okay, you've called that he was going to be sacked, and we're just going to say Drew Jones sacked Simon Goodwin. Perfect, right here on the Footy Interchange. How did the presser go, mate? I saw a couple of little grabs, a couple of interesting ones that I picked up was him putting his head back and talking about Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, as well as the little drive-by on Casey and the facilities out there. Any other good bits in there?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I think once you've been to enough of these coach sacking press conferences, and it is a little unusual sometimes for the coach to actually be there sitting next to the person who's ultimately made the decision to end their tenure at the club. But Simon handled it really well, spoke well about his desire to continue to coach. He was point blank in saying, I disagree with the decision. I could keep coaching this team. I think, we're not far away from bouncing, from getting back to contending for flags. Of course, a coach is always going to feel that way about his playing group. But it was the jovial nature. It was the jokes that he was cracking. That was what was different for me from a normal coach sacking press conference. So he had the Nasiah one when someone asked if the St Kilda game had ultimately cost him his job. They asked about what he loved about the job, what he'd remember, and he sort of finished by saying, I won't miss the long drive out to Casey, which was, I guess, not only funny, but a sort of thinly veiled swipe at the fact that the Demons just haven't been able to nail down a permanent home, splitting time between Amy Park and the MCG and Casey. And he sort of cracked a gag early when I asked him about, he'd said last week that he felt aligned with the club. And he sort of said, yeah, well, I got that one wrong. Obviously not. So he handled himself well. And to me, the reason he was there today was because he wants to coach again. So he was already putting in groundwork starting today about his future coaching jobs.
as a head coach or an assistant?
I think he wants to be a head coach again. That's what he said today.
It'd be interesting watch, and obviously the other side to it is that Simon Goodwin departs, but means Melbourne are now searching for a coach.
Yep.
What's been the initial reaction on the ground, firstly, from D supporters and people over there about this decision? And then secondly, how quickly do you think we see candidates start to emerge and that process happen?
Yeah, we heard some talk in the office about this last week, that they potentially had already been approaching senior candidates, and we couldn't verify that information. But it appears that potentially it was correct. But you would expect that John Longmire, Adam Simpson, Ken Hinkley, Nathan Buckley, like the conversations you could potentially have with all those coaches, if they believe that they're close to contending again, then going for an experienced coach would make some sense. Someone suggested today Danny Daly as an option for, a really good football operator, not necessarily, a career coach. And I thought that had some merit. And as far as assistant coaches goes, Stephen King, I think, presents really well as a potential future option. Unfortunately, health issues got in the way of that West Coast coaching candidacy. Brent Montgomery, I've heard spoken of really highly, but there's so many good operators out there. I think just one point I wanted to make to you guys is that I feel some sympathy for Simon Goodwin in that a football club just has to tick every box in order to be successful. It doesn't take much to get things wrong, as you guys know, and things can fall apart really quickly. Simon Goodwin didn't have a president this year, and he didn't have a CEO. The key pillars have been hired, but they're not at the club actually contributing. I mean, that must be really difficult to hold everything together when you don't have the senior people around you to steady the ship. And I spoke to Craig McRae about this, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying. He said, coaching is so hard. Even one or two little extra things that get put across your desk makes your week harder. Imagine how much extra stuff Simon was potentially dealing with because he didn't have the key people in place long term around him. So I feel a bit of sympathy for him that he's tried to reset the club, and 20 games later, he's been given his marching orders.
So any final thoughts then? Do you think he'll coach next year? Do you think the club's going to reset and go to youth, or are they going to have another crack? I know there's a couple of questions there, but what's your final thoughts on it?
Sounds like they're resetting for another crack, if that makes sense.
Right.
So that they want to reload. So the talk of trading out, gun players, it doesn't sound like that is something that they're considering at the moment. And to me, the way they were talking today suggests that they will go for an experienced coach to try and get the best out of Petrarca, Oliver, Gawn, Lever May, if that's the way that all works out. But it sounds like they're going again. As for Simon Goodwin, he said he wants to take a year off, most likely, and then reset for another crack.
There you go.
Appreciate your insight into all that today, Drew. As we switch our attention, of course, finals time in fantasy land for most. And what do you think of the right moves to pull right now, given you've been right across it for GOAT Fantasy all year?
Yeah, interesting week, isn't it? Dane Zorko is where I'm thinking this week. Premium defender that a lot of us have had for the majority of the year. He's carrying that foot injury. So over the last few weeks, there's been little flags with players, and when there's smoke, there's fire. Some people have traded in Jack Steele. Some people have held Connor Rozee and been willing to overlook these little issues, and it's ended up costing them. Dane Zorko is on record saying that he's got a foot injury and that he's playing through it. So if you've got Zorko this week, they've got the Lions, I believe. He is a key player, and he will continue to probably fight through the pain here. But I'm suggesting a sideways move away from Dane Zorko in defence, whether it's a Max Holmes, who's got a great run home for Geelong, whether it's Lockie Whitfield, who you haven't jumped on yet. But go for safety here. Let's not risk him being subbed halfway through the third quarter or a late withdrawal or something funky happening. I think play it safe with guys who have flags, and then with your other trade, let's think about could you do a Reilly Thilthorpe for 1 week up against West Coast if there's a chance for Adelaide to pile on a big score? Could you look at the Richmond matchup or the North Melbourne matchup and try and find a point of difference to get you up the rankings?
There's some exciting updates in fantasy footy for me, Drew. I just wanted to let you know on, mate. I've been playing for 24 years with my mates from school. I was in a qualifying final on the weekend against my best mate. I've never made the grand final. I beat him in a qualifying final from just off the back of a couple of great efforts. I'd like to give some personal shout-outs to George Hewitt, who went for almost 130, 25 disposals in the first half. It was a pleasure to call that for Fox Footy. Not only for footy, but I was just thinking about my dream team. And then who else went well? Guys like Tom McCarthy, guys like these are unsung heroes, by the way. People like Noah Anderson, just a big day against the Tigers. These guys have taken me all the way to a prelim final. I get the weekend off this weekend. And another update in that league, one of our league members won the entire round last week. And do you know what the prize is for winning that? I'm assuming you may.
For AFL Fantasy, do you get a signed Guernsey from the club that you put down that you support?
No, that would be good. No, you get a Sharon. Thanks to the AFL. It's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Very nice.
So a bit unders.
Well, yeah, shout out to my draft team, which had Connor Rozee and Jack Steele in it, both affected on Sunday. So maybe I'm giving myself some advice here to listen to the cues.
Okay, very good. Oh, I did it, by the way, with Connor Rozee on my field as a donut. So shout out to my best mate Mike, who absolutely shit the bed with a couple of selections of his.
And this is where all
better luck next year, Mike.
Starts. This is where all the sledging starts at this time of year.
Yes, that's his clipped up and gone straight to him.
Brilliant stuff, Drew. If people want any more insight, they can check it out at Goat Fantasy across all the socials as well for that latest fantasy news. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
On your mic. Good stuff.
There goes Drew Jones. Was it Sharon? That's all you get?
It's $100. Well, they're valued at $180. They're pretty expensive.
It's a good, Sharon's great.
And $100 team store voucher.
But he's won the whole, out of everyone in Australia, he's won the round.
And I don't know exactly how many people are in it, but there's a lot.
Surely.
I think there's 100,000 people there. He's won the entire thing.
Feels like the price should be a bit bigger.
I think it's unders.
Just a footy.
I think it's unders. I came second.
Have the AFL just got a share in a used one just that has been kicked
around?
Well,
I don't know. Well, that would be good. I'd like a used one. Imagine a match day. What do they do with them all? Where do they go?
I don't know. They just go training balls.
One of them would be good.
Whatever.
I came second about 3 years ago in a round.
Yeah.
And I got done by 3 points. I was pretty flat. Because do you reckon I'd still be talking about that?
So you were talking about watching the game on the weekend. See, I've pulled back on my fantasy footy because I find a few years ago I would start to look at things and get a bit distracted sometimes looking at a certain player. So I have pulled back on my interest level.
I was very distracted on that.
So when Jager O'Meara went to pay a bit more attention to George Hewitt in the
I was
second
disappointed. I had a fair bit going on. I'd been busy preparing for the game and I kind of butchered a couple of things. I'd vice captain Bailey Smith thinking if he goes well, I'll just go with him. And I had Brayshaw as sort of my backup as captain, but then realised once the Geelong game was almost done, we were about to start our game and I had no way to loophole it. So I had to commit to Brayshaw as the captain. He started a little slower than I would have liked. And I was sort of, mate, in the last quarter, I won by 10 points. So the last quarter, with 5 minutes to go, Brayshaw's on the bench. We're calling. And I made the comment oh, geez, I wonder if Brayshaw's going to
get him back out there.
Get him on there. JL, banging on the window. Get him on.
Get him on. Got to pay more attention to how you're just trying to push players' agendas through the game as well.
To be honest, I do it. I do it in a good way.
Yeah.
Like I was singing George Hewitt's praises.
Just keep him going. Very good. Thanks very much to Drew Jones talking some fantasy. Let's keep kicking it around the country. The Footy Interchange, well, let's head to Queensland, of course, with Tom Rockliff, who joined us, 200 gamer in the AFL. Rockliff Finance for all your finance needs, and he joined us right now, Tom. Where do we find you, actually, for those watching along on YouTube, out and about today?
Out and about, enjoying the Queensland sunshine. It's got a spring in the air, believe it or not. So September action just around the corner. And I tell you what, the Queensland teams will be enjoying that. So I'm just out on the road today, just trying to wheel and deal, get a few finance deals in. But I'm in Bulimba, actually, so a leafy suburb of Brisbane.
Very nice. Enjoy the sunshine while you've got it. Things looking a little rosier this week for Brisbane in particular. That was a mighty performance against Collingwood at the MCG, a ground that they don't seem to fear anymore, and a big bounce back, of course, after the Q Clash.
Yeah, it was. I think so. Going back, that was 2014. I think since they beat Collingwood at the MCG, I have a feeling that may have been my 100th game where I had 46 or something. So it was good that they got that monkey off the back. But I mean, it's just typical of Brisbane and the way they've played this season, isn't it? That we spoke about them getting themselves up for these big games and doing numbers on oppositions. They've done it when they've gone down there against Hawthorn. They did it again on the weekend. So those big games they've been able to get themselves up for, but it was a nice bounce back. I'm sure they would have copped it between the eyes from Chris Fagan the week before after the Q clash and the way they performed against the Gold Coast Suns. So their best is still the best in the competition, in my opinion. You've seen what they did on the weekend. We know Collingwood. I mean, do you want to say it? Collie Wobbles are back,
Oh, no.
which is fantastic, Scully. But I mean, their best footy, Brisbane, is better than anyone in the comps, in my opinion. So yeah, super performance on Saturday night, and one that can really springboard them. They've got a couple of challenging games in front of them. Sydney this week that they want to make sure they get the job done this weekend. But yeah, they want to probably lock away a top 2 spot.
Now, you've got a few of these guys, but I'm sure you'd like to say your boy in Logan Morris. Talk to us about him. I mean, have you called this? Is this all you're doing?
Well, I mean, we can go back. The history is there. It's imprinted on this podcast. I think I mentioned maybe pre-season or very early on in the season that he may be the best key forward in the competition by decade's end. Well, I tell you what, he's going to lay claim to it earlier than that. There's some stiff competition. We understand that. Jeremy Cameron's still probably number 1 in the competition. He's out in front in the Coleman medal. We know what Sam Darcy can do, but this boy, what he's doing at his age, as the prime target in that front half, his kick bags are 5.56, and he looks like he's just enjoying footy. So as long as no one goes out there and tries to orchestrate him to straighten up and take things a bit more serious, you can see him smiling. He loves playing footy. The way he's gone about it is sensational. And I think he is a different element to the key forwards that we've seen in the past. He's not the tallest in that front half, but he's got an ability to read the footy where it's going, and he finds ways to kick goals. And I think he's a super talent. And Brisbane have a bit of a conundrum on their hands. They're right into Oscar Allen, as been reported all year. They're right into Sam Draper, but how do they fit all these big blokes in? They've got Day on their list. They've got Oscar McInerney as well. So I think Logan Morris is going to be probably the number 1 key forward in the competition by decade's end.
Wow, big call. You're onto him early, so you're going to keep on riding his success. I think it's just great to see some of the key forwards kicking bags of goals in the game too. The Suns game against the Tigers, I'm sure you've been watching that one on replay a few times over the last couple of days.
Well, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of footy and some ordinary games. And yes, I know I played in some of the worst teams ever. I think we played Scully's mob for a wooden spoon once over in Perth, and it was probably one of the worst games we ever played in. But at least it was somewhat enjoyable. That was probably the worst game of footy I've ever seen on the weekend, Richmond versus Gold Coast Suns. It was tough to get through in the commentary box, obviously working for Triple M. It was difficult to stay upbeat and try and get through that game. For Richmond to kick their second goal with 1 minute to go, it's there'd have to be some concerns for the AFL. What are they going to do in the last week when Essendon have to come up here and play the Gold Coast Suns? When who knows what's on the line? Gold Coast Suns probably pick their VFL team in the basis that if someone gets knocked out, they'd potentially miss the first final, pending where they sit on the ladder. So they've got a real conundrum there. But it was a shocking game of footy. But they flexed their muscles in that second half and did what they had to. First half, they would have been a little bit disappointed with. They were five goals up at half time, but they should have been a fair bit further in front. And we know where Richmond are in their rebuild phase. They've got young kids and it's going to take a bit of time. They look really tired now. They look like that. They just want season end. So difficult game of footy, but the Gold Coast Suns did what they had to.
Question without notice. I saw some of your action late on Sunday on X, which I enjoy you on X. You're actually one of my favourites because you fire people up. So you're speaking about the depth of talent in the competition right now, and it was off the back of watching, as you've just described, the worst game you've ever seen in your life. How do you fix that though? Like, how do you actually fix? They're going to put new teams in. This is happening. We can't stop it. How do you think it's unfixable?
Well, I don't think it's unfixable, but they're going to have to change something. They can't continue on the path that they're on at the moment. They need to rejig something, whether it be that there's the draft is so compromised now. I think free agency needs to be looked at. It hasn't had the impact that the players probably wanted it to have, in the fact that you do your time, then you find your way to other organisations, because now we've got a gap that's widening. And I know that last season was a lot closer. We had the 15 teams that were thereabouts. It could have played finals up until only a couple of weeks to go. But all the free agency's doing is making it go to bigger clubs. All Geelong have done it so well. Hawthorn did it so well that it needs to be rejigged. I think it's potentially that. Maybe look at draft age increasing so that we have players that are prepped. I think the National Reserves competition has to come in the basis that you can get eyeballs on footy, so you can televise those games like the good old days in Victoria when it used to be on the ABC, I think. But you can get the double footy hit. You watch your kids up and coming, so they're not being exposed at the AFL level. I think there's a number of levers that they can pull. West Coast, for instance, one of the richest clubs in Australia. Well, I think they probably are the richest AFL club. They've got the NGA zone. They can go and spend money on that and develop talent so that they've got their own footy factory in that zone so that their players go there. So I don't know the exact solution, but I don't think they can continue the way they are. If they're going to bring in more teams, the talent pool is going to be stretched thinner, and no one's watching games. There was 2 games, probably Freo and Carlton. You could probably argue, oh, maybe we hung around because it was close for longer, but eyeballs on the screen for longer periods is the key, and we're seeing wipeouts. Like, even, I know no one really predicted it. You thought the Western Bulldogs would win, but not the way they won against the Giants. So something needs to be done, because I think there's a lot of players playing AFL footy that aren't ready yet.
Don't worry about Dylan and Harley and Swan, Schofield and Rockliff on the ticket to run the competition.
That's fine. Yeah, CEO, COO. Yeah, I've got no worries with that.
Well, I think there's a lot of levers that they can pull potentially to look at, because as you said, Scully, they are going to bring in the teams. I mean, 16 I think would be the sweet spot for me, but yeah, we know people jump up and down about it.
The max contract that happens in the NBA, I reckon there's something there as well, keeping Nazai Wanganeen-Miller at St Kilda, because we'll speak about it probably later on in the show, but he will, if he leaves, St Kilda may as well just pack the whole thing up, just finish up, and they're not going to be able to keep him.
100%. I think that's another one. I would go to 5-year max contracts, no longer than 5 years, because clubs have got themselves into trouble. Melbourne's a prime example. They've got these people on long-term contracts that aren't performing at that level. And the other one is that 20% bonus. So Wanganeen Miller, you can pay him 20% outside the cap because you drafted him. West Coast can pay Harley Reid 20% outside the salary cap because they drafted him. I think there needs to be that element as well. So you're developing this talent, you keep it. A couple more things that sprung to mind. Soft cap has to increase. There's so many smart minds that are in the media instead of being at clubland because the money's not there. It makes it near impossible. It'll actually help player development. So you could increase your coaching panels by getting the smarter minds back involved in footy, whether it be better coaching programs as well, get teachers involved. I think there's a lot that they can look at.
Some terrific suggestions there, and looking forward to hearing the listeners' thoughts on all of those as well. Trav, before we let you go, we don't have Don Cassisi today. He's caught the flu. I'm not sure if he's just allergic to Adelaide winning all the time or not. But
he hasn't been in Australia. He's Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand.
But he lives the life. He lives the life.
He does. Travis Boak announcing his retirement today, a former teammate of yours. And just love to get your insight on his legacy, I guess, at Port Adelaide, almost 400 games and hanging up the boots.
Yeah, he probably finishes his career and doesn't get what he deserves. He certainly deserves a premiership. He deserves to stand on that dice and hold the premiership cup up. But as we know, not everyone gets that opportunity. He's the most professional player I ever played with throughout my time. It's a credit to him and a testament to him that he got as much out of himself. And he probably has a little bit more to offer, which means he's probably going out at the right time. You don't want to see the superstars go out and play a year too long or anything like that. He's had a stunning career, as loyal as they come. We know that Geelong rolled the red carpet out to get him back there, seen him go in. He's decided to stay at Port Adelaide when you couldn't have blamed him for leaving. The club was on its knees. He stuck around, captain of the footy club, led them back to those prelim finals. They went within a kick against Hawthorn. They went within a kick against Richmond to go into a grand final. So he was thereabouts. But he's one of the best teammates, hardest working I've ever seen. He goes away and spends so much time throughout his off season getting his body right, and a testament to him and his career. And he'll be successful in whatever he does post footy. Another one that you hope stays involved in the game, but as the soft cap is there, it probably doesn't. But I mean, he's been a champion. To go through what he went through as a young fella, he's openly spoken about it, to lose your old man when you're 14, 15, and he's your absolute idol, and then to be almost the father figure for his sisters, older sister, younger sister. He's a true family man, and where he's got to is really incredible. And I suppose when you're that age, you can go one of two ways, and he's chosen the right path, and it's a credit to how the person he is and how much he's loved and respected within the four walls of Port Adelaide, but I would say in the competition as well.
Really well said. Great stuff. Tom, always love chatting with you, mate. All the best.
Good on you, gents.
Tom Rockliff there from sunny Queensland, and his thoughts on Travis Boak there, Scully as well. And I mean, we're talking about free agency, the fact he never went back to Geelong, and he's had such a lasting legacy at Port.
Yeah. So speaking about his old man, so my old man and Trav's old man played a lot of footy together, Torquay Footy Club, and around the traps as young men. So we knew the family really well, I played all my junior footy with Trav. We played in the Geelong Falcons together. We were in the same draft. So in terms of players in the AFL that I really grew up with, he's probably the one that I played the most footy with, Trav. So played in grand final in his first year in 2007. So he was on one side, Joel Selwood was on the other side. I remember watching that from the sidelines, and it didn't go the way Trav would have hoped. Obviously a big loss there to Geelong, but it's been great to watch his career, similar to Rocky, sort of watching just, how much he's got out of himself, really. I thought he maybe potentially could have gone on for another year, just how he's been going, but he's an old bugger now. So he can sit back, relax. He's got a lot of connection back to Victoria as well, and, he's settled in South Australia now, and, hats off to him.
Yeah, well done to Travis Boak on a great career. While we are talking the South Australian teams as well, Adelaide, what a win it was, sitting up the top. Are they your premiership favourite right now? Are they in calculations? Like, have we underestimated Adelaide for too long?
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes, we have underestimated them. Are they my premiership favourite? No. I don't know why, and I don't know who is. I'm just looking at the ladder. I like Freo. I seriously like Freo.
Yep.
Yeah. I know that's. I like a lot of things they're doing. They're going to have big tests over the next 3 weeks, and maybe I'll retract that over the 3 weeks if they can't stand up against some really good sides. They've got Brisbane and the Bulldogs in the next 3.
They're going to have to win one of those, I think, to have a chance at top 4.
Yeah.
But the Crows look like they're almost locked for top 4 now.
Yeah. I mean, if Freo have to win all 3 to be a chance at the premiership, I think. I think they're going to go close to top, or they're going to definitely be top 4 to win it. But Adelaide are in the best spot, playing great footy. I guess they're just an unknown. That's probably why I don't have them favourite, but they're very good.
Do you buy into the theory that teams need to have played finals beforehand to?
It certainly helps
to actually make a proper run at it.
It definitely helps. It's just a new game at finals. It's a new game mentally, not physically. A lot more pressure, and decisions you make are quicker. There's more on the line. One mistake feels like 10. So if you can, they could be able to execute, no worries. But it certainly helps having been in that environment before, and you kind of know what's coming.
Great to chat to Tom Rockliff up there in Queensland. And we covered off a bit of Queensland, obviously, and some South Australian footy news as well here on the Footy Interchange. Well, let's look at the latest footy news out of Western Australia. Eliza Reilly is going to join us. But, of course, this segment, Scully, is brought to us by Heyscape.
That is right. Off the grid, sustainability-focused cabins. You can get the best of the outdoors while having a bit of luxury as well. They're all over Western Australia, Denmark, Yellingup, Busso. which you'd be happy with, given you're the king of Bustleton. King or mayor? What are you?
We'll go mayor for now.
Right, perfect. Yep. Might have to see if the mayor can have a stay at the Bustleton Heyscape location just to test things out.
Yeah, let's get down. Let's make it happen, please.
I've got to assume that you just say the word. It's like, hey, guys, I'm coming down. This is the weekend. Clear
the highway.
Yeah, correct.
Going down.
If you do think that would be a bit of fun with your partner or significant other or friends and family, I've stayed in a couple of them. They're pretty good. So go to heyscape.com.au. There's a winter special on right now. Winter 150 will save you $150.
Yep. A few Eagles fans just escaping during September with Freo are in a final.
Yeah, you don't have to have the TV on down there. Just
just
keep
go
it off
the grid into a nice escape. Just get away from the footy for a little bit.
Correct.
Let's talk some footy out of West Australia, though, with Eliza Reilly, who joins us, of course, from Code Sports. Eliza, the Dockers survived a scare against the Blues. The injury toll comes, though, with Hayden Young. And now the big question is all around Nat Fyfe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be the big what if leading into the game this weekend. Does or doesn't Nat Fyfe play, given he absolutely tore up the waffle on the weekend. And it was quite a surprise given, I'm sure you guys saw the state of Claremont Oval a bit earlier in the day. It looked like more of a pool than a football oval, and there was a few calls to pull Nat out given that it was such horrendous conditions down there. But he got out there, he racked up 28 touches in only sort of 60% or 60 minutes of game time, which was a really good result given that, he did that calf a few weeks ago in warming up as substitute, and a few people were sort of wondering whether that was going to be the end of Nat Fyfe, but he's rallied, he got himself back playing footy, and now with no Hayden Young on the weekend, given he has suffered that abductor strain, Fremantle's midfield has sort of been intrinsically linked to the presence of a big body midfielder this year, and we saw against the Blues again on the weekend, they got beat up around the stoppages significantly in that first half, and had to send Luke Jackson in there as a big tall bloke to block out for the others, given that the likes of George Hewitt and Patrick Cripps were tearing them up in there. So I think when it comes to whether Nat Fyfe makes his return, the Dockers need to sort of find a way to get him in there this weekend against Port Adelaide, given it's going to be a very similar story with the likes of Willem Drew and Ollie Wines as well.
Personally, I think they're going to commit to Erasmus. I liked a fair bit of his game on the weekend, and they can use Fyfe as the sub, and hopefully they get Young back in 1 week, as they've come out and said, which is just one of the more ridiculous medical statements I've seen from a footy club. With my limited knowledge of soft tissue injuries, I laughed at that a lot. Anyway, that's just my opinion. What about those depth players, though, Lies, with Will Brodie and Neil Erasmus to speak about? Matt Johnson, you could probably chuck him in there. Clubs starting to have a look at Freo midfield depth players?
Yeah, obviously Matt Johnson's another one we could have mentioned in that last segment as well, being injured and them sort of missing his height around the footy. But Brodie has been linked over the weekend to Port Adelaide, who we know that Josh Carr's set to take over next year, and was a fan of his work when he was working at the Dockers, and he had put together that terrific season back in 2022 when the Dockers last played finals. So Josh Carr's sniffing around there, knowing that Will Brodie's just done absolutely everything in his power to get back to AFL level and can't even make it further than the emergency bench, which is a credit to Fremantle's midfield depth as it is at the moment, with the likes of Brayshaw, Sarong leading the way, and then guys like Young we haven't seen much of this season, but Will Brodie's just a few too many players down the pecking order at the moment, and clubs are starting to have a bit of a sniff, and the same with Erasmus, who, like you said, had some good moments on the weekend, but he's now, as well as being linked to West Coast, the Western Bulldogs have entered the picture for his signature, given they're sort of planning for life without Tom Liberatore in a few years' time. So if he did go to the Bulldogs, it sounds like he'd find himself in a pretty similar situation. He'd be a couple of players down the pecking order and was sort of waiting for an injury, but with someone like Erasmus, he just still looks like he's finding his feet at AFL level. And given he's a few years into his career now, you want to find out pretty soon if you're going to be a consistent player or not.
Looking across at West Coast, Eliza, obviously a pretty disappointing loss again for them on the weekend, going down to Melbourne the way they did. Campbell Chesser looked like a good tick, though, seeing him back playing and the run and carry that he's able to generate.
Yeah, he's had such a shocking run with injury back since, his very first sort of pre-season game when he went down with that serious ankle injury, and he's struggled to get back and show the signs that led to West Coast drafting him. That speed was a big reason why they sort of slid down the pecking order on draft night a few years ago with that live trading. And I think his injuries have limited his ability to show that. But on the weekend, he was sort of linking up through the middle of the ground, putting on the afterburners and sort of showing those capabilities and those attributes that saw West Coast jump on him. And he kicked a goal as well, nice goal to sort of cap off his day. So obviously it was a disappointing day for West Coast as a whole, but certainly a bright light with Campbell Chesser back on the footy field. But Andrew McQualter has sort of spoken after the game and said West Coast need more experienced players in the door, and there's been spoken about sort of being linked with Jack Steele, the captain of St Kilda, who was, of course, named substitute on the weekend. It's going to be a really interesting off-season yet again for West Coast because we know what they're in search of, but this time last year they said they wanted experienced players as well and brought in Baker, Graham and Owis. Baker's probably been the pick of them. Graham's obviously let himself down with that suspension for homophobic comments, and Matt Owis has been in and out on the side with injury and form. So if they're going to pick up experience, they need to, I think, look towards that top echelon, that top end of player.
Can I just ask one last one? Simon Goodwin worked pretty closely with Andrew McQualter. Any chance he comes back as assistant coach next year? We know they want to add to the coaching ranks as well.
Yeah, there's always a chance, isn't there, if Simon decides that his future is coaching. And he said that in his press conference this morning that he would love to coach again, whether that means at senior level. He probably would have to work his way back to the top via that assistant role. And we know that now that McQualter's got sort of 1 year under the belt, he does want to bring in a bit more of his, flavour and flair to all areas of the football club, but also including the assistant coaching panel, which has obviously was sort of inherited by him when he took that role. So it's going to be a really interesting watch to see where Simon Goodwin ends up and whether it is straight back into coaching or whether he does sort of take a year off, given he said this morning he spent the last 30 years of his life in the football industry and might be time for a bit of a break first.
Brilliant stuff, Eliza. Love your work as always.
Thanks, guys.
Eliza Reilly there with the latest in WA, of course, from Code Sports. And this segment brought to you by Heyscape. If you're looking to book an escape around WA, make sure you check them out, heyscape.com.au. The Footy Interchange, let's look at New South Wales. Terrific to chat to Cal Sinclair. We've missed him for a couple of weeks, but really good to chat some footy. Cal, we've spoken already today about a big retirement today in Travis Boak, but in the last couple of days also confirmed a retirement of Cal Ward at the GWS Giants, which isn't a surprise to too many, but he leaves a pretty big legacy at that club.
Yeah, definitely not a surprise, but very, very unfortunate. It reminded me of a bit of a Chris Judd exit. You might remember how he went down with his ACL at the MCG. But I've made comment, for the Giants to go into September this year, they do need, I guess, some solid midfield depth. He was that perfect kind of combative physical presence that they need. So he'll be missed in September, and longer term he certainly will be as well. So big gap of leadership to fill, and also that presence in the middle of the ground is going to be hard to replace. Huge loss to the Giants last week against the Bulldogs. What do they need to be a chance to be a risk in finals, but even make it? Well, there's probably two reasons. Jesse Hogan is a massive out for them. I've got real question marks on Riccardi and how he can actually hold up in September, to be brutally honest. I think, don't get me wrong, he's a serviceable player, but Jesse Hogan needs to be next to him. Toby Green is the obvious one. If I was the Giants, I'd be really disappointed in his behaviour the last kind of couple of weeks, not only with the Papalia kind of comments, but I guess his striking act there of Isaac Heaney. Like, when's this guy actually going to learn his lesson? He's no use to the Giants on the sidelines at the sticky end of the year and the pointy end of the season. He needs to be out on the park. So every game's crucial for them, and they're two key clogs. They're just not part of it at the moment. They need a big response to the Giants this week. Really disappointing in that game against the Dogs. For Sydney, as a former ruckman yourself, how disappointed were you that Errol Goulden just burnt Brodie Grundy from giving him that 40th disposal? Oh, I just think it's an absolute disgrace to the industry as a whole. And really, Errol should have a good hard look at himself. If it was if I was running the AFL, I'd be taking his All-Australian blazer off him, to be quite frank. But and this is what you come to expect from guys like Errol. But either way, I tell you what, though, you wouldn't get many numbers like that from a ruckman anywhere else. But 39 disposals, and I think it was 13 clearances or something close to that. So incredible. I'm really impressed with his form. He probably got a kick up the backside probably about 6 weeks ago, I reckon, for some pretty lackluster form, but he's making a late charge and challenging Max Gawn for All-Australian. Max will probably get there, but he might be a sneaky chance off the bench.
Small rebuild required at the Swans, or can they keep challenging? Where are they at?
No, they're very hot and cold at the moment. They remind me of Sam Reid's footy career. You know, one year he'd be absolutely dominating, then the following year he'd be just hamstrings and calves and everything left, right, and centre. So,
savvy.
Look, mate, they're an interesting one. I think people have their list as, you know, arguably, I guess, the most talented in the comp, but they just can't consistently put it together. So I think there might be a bit of an internal kind of look at how their injuries are kind of handled longer term, but they're just 1 year off, 1 year on at the moment. So hopefully next year's their year, but you'll just be curious to know, can they actually get their players to the pointy end of September again? Because I think it shows as the year's gone on, they're just struggling to recover from those two disasters.
On fire on your return, Cal. Great to chat, mate. Thank you very much.
No worries. See ya.
Cal Sinclair there with all the latest footy news out of New South Wales and a couple of drive-bys on the way through.
Yeah, I like it.
The Footy Interchange injury update as we go to Steve Gravina, former physio in the AFL, of course, from Frontrunner Physiotherapy in Osborne Park. Steve, always great to chat to you and talk injury news, mate. Scully's already been fired up about injury news when we were talking to Eliza about Hayden Young. So, Freo haven't quite put the solid timeline on it yet. They say he's definitely going to miss this week. They'll wait and see how it progresses from there. But with that type of injury, what are you sort of thinking?
Yeah, it's going to be really tricky for him. You know, he's lost all continuity this year with the recurrent injuries. So, you know, it's likely that it's a very separate injury than his hamstring. So probably an adductor longus muscle injury, but there's a few other little muscles around the area which could mimic a groin strain like that. At the lower end, you know, yeah, it is a 1 or 2 week injury, but he's just hasn't put any work in to give him any kind of confidence for the back end of this season. So you probably need to train him up a little bit to give him a bit of conditioning to give yourself a chance that he's going to stand up for finals. Because if you rush him back again and that re-injures or you know, the hamstring goes, then it's curtains for the year, which would be devastating for Freo.
A update 54 minutes ago from our good friend Ashley Nelson at Channel 10. She's put some vision up of Hayden Young running. I'm just watching it on my phone. He's going at about a 3 out of 10, and it looks to be about 60 metres strides. In your experience, now I was strong on this before, in your experience, not with Hayden Young and Fremantle specifically, but just AFL in general, do you think it's a positive or a negative that Freo have said 1 week, but we're not too sure it might be longer? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a great thing.
No.
You know, there's obviously muscle pathology on imaging. Now, the fact that he's jogging, that's good and that's fine. And you know, there are certain muscles that you can get back and get to a low intensity running volume back pretty quickly. You know, after a low grade hammy, you're back running after 2 days. But, you know, the groin is critically important, and that groin muscle complex for, you know, high-speed running, change direction, kicking. So they're the ones where you're going to be conservative with, and they're the ones which aren't going to stand up within a week or two if they've been damaged. So yeah, I would have got on the front foot and maybe probably, you know, said a couple of weeks at least to give everyone a bit more clarity, because questions are going to be asked straight away next week. You know, if he's not full training next week or doing a lot more by the end of this week, you can't see him being put up for next week. You know, they could roll the dice and try and put him as a sub and go with modified minutes, but it's just a huge gamble at this time of the year. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to follow.
Will Day was the other one that has been interesting to follow all year. Steve, we've spoken about it a bit in terms of how you get back from that type of injury. The fact it's a reoccurrence again is really concerning.
Can I just jump in here, Stevie? So ringing in my ears, we spoke to you when he first did this injury this year, and I'm sure you said something around like this is the sort of injury that can be career-ending, not necessarily season-ending, but one that has ended careers. And you were very – I just remember you when you spoke about it, you were like, I would be surprised if we see him again this year. We have, and now there's a re-injury.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him again, and I'm devastated for the kid. Like, that's for it to come again after you've had surgery. It's massive alarm bells for, you know, his longevity as a football player. Unfortunately, There were two others last year, I think, that went down with navicular stressors. I had a bit of a look back, Strawn and Conway in the AFL. We haven't seen them again this year. 4 months for a return, it's pretty aggressive. And, I'm sure the footy club at Hawthorn went and spoke to all the experts. They've got a really senior medical team at Hawthorn. They've been stable for a long, long time. So, they wouldn't have done anything too high risk. And all the markers would have said, yeah, he's going really well. But, yeah, it's a really bullish decision to bring him back at 16 weeks. So the fact that it's failed again, look, it may require surgery, it may require a really long layoff, but you'd imagine, the whole of next year would be up in the air for this kid, and hopefully, we get some signs to suggest that it's going to stand up for the long term. But the famous case of Matty Egan was a couple of episodes of this, and that was his career done.
Yeah,
it's not good.
No, not good at all.
We called a game, Paps, here at Optus Stadium. Harry O'Farrell kicked his first goal, brilliant moment, and brought the entire squad to him. And then I reckon 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, he's done his ACL. So how did you see this one, Steve?
Yeah, another little innocuous one. I was watching it as well, mate, and you called it. Like, there wasn't a lot in it. Again, marking contest was sort of knocked midair, and that leg landed outside of his centre of mass. So all of his weight was going vertically down. His leg was outside of that, so his foot landed. Force goes through the knee, creates a buckling moment, and unfortunately the ACL gives way. So that second first-round pick Carlton have had this year go down with an ACL, which is horrible luck for them at a time where they need their young guns, showing something for them. So it'll be a 12-month situation, and it's an awkward timing because, you're going to get to the back end of next season where he's looking good, and you have to start to decide how much you're going to, I guess, run the risk, because your first month of footy after an ACL return is high risk. So whether we see him at the back end of next year, hopefully we do, but it might be most of next year, if not all of next year, is in rehab.
Is there any research that around ACLs? I just feel like there's been so many this year. Is there any research around like predetermining factors, genetics, or body weight? Like, I think about people I know have done ACLs. Some are big, some are small. Is there stuff that says, this person's more likely to do it, or is it luck?
No, there's a lot of factors which predetermine your risk profile, and so all clubs will be doing that when they're drafting these kids. So past history is number one predictor. Like, if you've done it before, then you're massively high risk, and a lot of clubs really do look at that significantly. If a kid's had an ACL in under 16s, under 18s, I remember the King scenario of Ben and Max King. Max had done his ACL in the under 18s. Ben hadn't, but he was his twin. And you're looking at whether you draft these kids, your risk profile is huge for these guys. They're sort of generational forwards that you take the punt on. But that can be a decision maker for AFL clubs whether they pick you up. Family history as well. Whether your parents, your sister, your brother has done it before, increases your risk profile. Your body type is a big one, and your biomechanics of just how you're made up. So people that have just got naturally wider pelvises, for example, mean that the angle at the knee puts you at a slightly higher risk. Different ethnicities, have higher risk profiles as well. So there's lots of things that comes into it. And then younger athletes, so people that aren't skeletally mature, so late developers, taller guys with longer limbs, all of that goes into it. And so these key forwards at a young age, when they're exposed to high-speed games of footy with bigger forces and bigger opponents, they are a little bit more high risk, and we're seeing a few of these young kids go down, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's terrific insight from you, Steve. Appreciate it as always, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Steve Gravina there, former physio in the AFL. You can check him out at Frontrunner Physiotherapy in Osborne Park. Well, that's it for the Footy Interchange today. Been a busy show, a little more serious than some of the shows I reckon we've had lately, Scully. Obviously, a big news day, lots going on at the D's. So
I'm going to give you a finishing gag or
straight
something.
I don't know. We'll line it up a bit. We always do with the question segment, which will drop on Thursday too, which is good. So you got to get your questions in on a Tuesday morning for that. Hit me or Scully up on socials, or you can be a patron.
If you are a patron, just pay attention to either the community chat we've got going over there, a bit of a group chat. I'm seeing seeing them coming in now, which is good. Or we should have a post up. You can reply back in the comments. If you're not a patron, you can sign up on backchatpodcast.com.au. Just sign up on the Patreon link there, and you can support the show, ask your questions, discounts on merch, discounts to events like we had last week with the Derby show, the BackChat bus as well on the week that's gone by. So you can get all that if you're a Patreon and join us there.
Brilliant stuff. I've heard a few stories filtering through from the BackChat bus on the podcast over the last couple of days. Sound like you had a good time?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, got myself up for work on the Sunday, though.
That's the most important thing. Brilliant to have your company today on the podcast. As always, drop some comments where you can, and we'll check you again next Tuesday.